AI is incredible. It can teach you how to fry an egg and even write a poem, pirate style. Yarr! But it knows nothing about your work. Slackbot is different. It doesn't just know the facts. It knows your schedule. It can turn a brainstorm into a brief. And it doesn't need to be taught. Because Slackbot isn't just another AI. It's AI that knows your work as well as you do. Visit slack.com/meet Slackbot to learn more.
For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan, Capitol Bureau Chief and host of Under the Dome. You're listening to our latest episode for the week of December 16th, 2024. We are 2 weeks out from the end of the year, and there is still legislating. Well, it just happened. We're done now for the year. Today, I'm joined by reporter from Enlace Latino NC, Claudia Rivera Cotto. Thank you so much for being here, Claudia.
Thank you for having me.
So we were both at the legislative building for the most recent drama, the December drama. So we're going to talk about that first, and then we're going to talk more specifics on other legislation. To introduce Claudia, she's a bilingual journalist who covers political, government, and immigration issues in North Carolina for Enlace Latino NC. She's part of Report for America. Previously, she worked as a social issues journalist at the Columbia Missourian. She has a bachelor's degree in journalism and English from the University of Puerto Rico and a master's degree in investigative and data journalism from the University of Missouri. Actually, before we talk about the veto override drama, tell people a little bit about how long you've been covering the legislature, why you wanted to cover the legislature.
Yes, so I've been here for about a year, a little bit more, in North Carolina, covering politics, immigration, and obviously the General Assembly is part of that. And mostly what I do is just try to see how these laws impact the Latino community here in North Carolina. We have a big Latino community, and they don't receive the news as much in Spanish. There's not many Spanish newspapers, digital newspapers out there. So that's what we're trying to do, try to educate them and also bring a light of what are their experiences and how these things are impacting them.
Okay. So this week was the final veto override. It was the Senate last week, and the House overturned Democratic Governor Roy Cooper's veto of Senate Bill 382, which had some Helene relief allocations, but basically was about taking power from the executive branch. I was in the corner, in the press corner on the floor. You were up with a press view from the gallery. What was it like from that moment when, after the vote, and then the gallery was full of protesters, or they were there before the session even started, right?
Yes, so the protesters were inside the gallery. There were some people even outside of the gallery in that third floor. It was full of protesters with signs as well. And right after the vote, they just started chanting shame several times. And at that moment, the police officers that were there started to tell them that they had to leave. So they got up, left the gallery area to the outside of the floor. Out there, they still started chanting some hymns, some also shame again. And at that point was when the police officers started saying that if they did not leave the gallery or that area, they could be arrested. And they started following the leads, but there were some that stayed a little bit longer, and at least one person was arrested. A woman was seen visibly arrested, but the rest of them eventually left, and that was it. But it was a lot of, I would say, chaos for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And the people were obviously concerned about this law. They were talking to us as well over there. We talked to some people from Democracy Out Loud. They're concerned about how much this bill, which is now enacted law, grabs from the government, specifically from the new elected governor, also the attorney general, and the superintendent of public instruction.
Mm-hmm. So as we record this Friday afternoon, on Thursday evening, Governor-elect Josh Stein and outgoing Governor Roy Cooper had already filed a lawsuit over the highway patrol aspect of the bill. And we'll probably see some more lawsuits, I think. And that was just the first one. When Speaker Moore, talked to reporters on the floor after session, he kind of quipped, well, they've probably already filed a lawsuit while we're talking. So I think this will end up in litigation for a while. I'm interested you said about a year that what's your perspective as a reporter seeing kind of that push-pull between the legislative branch and the executive branch? I've only been covering state politics for about 5 years, but it seems like this is something that North Carolina just likes to do. Of course, it's also the party division.
Yes, I think that because also in North Carolina, there is that supermajority in the General Assembly that allows them to override the governor's veto. It's something that definitely creates a lot of conflict in between the governor, which is Democrat, and then the supermajority, which is Republican. And it's something that, it's been very interesting to see since I got here. There's been a lot of bills that have been overwritten since then.
Well, that's a good segue to talk about House Bill 10, which the bill that was the veto was overridden became law. It was two very different topics. It funded about $500 million in the waiting list of private school vouchers, and also required sheriffs to cooperate with ICE detainers. This has been something that Republicans have been pushing for years, I think. You talked about, talking to those in the community about what this means. What's the outside of politics side of this, as far as what people are talking about in the community about what this actually means on the ground?
Yes. So as you were mentioning, this has been something that has been for years. Particularly the community is concerned. They have fear because they think that this bill or this now law can impact the relationship that they have with local authorities. They fear that they can be arrested by minor crimes. And this fear is not unfounded because they saw during 2006 a program that was a federal program called 287G. At that moment, it was meant to have collaboration with the local sheriffs and ICE. It was voluntary, but they saw that a lot of the people from the community that got detained were from minor crimes. And this is what they saw on the ground. Now with HB 10, they're saying it's not going to happen again. But one thing is what the law says, and the other thing is what they see in practice. And this mentioning also that the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill did actually a study in the 287G, and it found that most of the people that were arrested were for traffic violations, such as driving without a license, speeding, and overall 33% of the individuals in some of the counties like Gaston, Mecklenburg, and Alamance were arrested for this, and in Gaston County, the figure rose up to 57%. So this history is what has led to also the mistrust in this community and the fear also now that we are going to have in President-elect Donald Trump, which also has made some claims about massive deportations. That aligned with this local law is something that is definitely creating a lot of distrust and fear in the community.
How do you, I'd like to talk about Trump, but when you're talking about the distrust and fear in the community, and how do you write for just a wide range of people? Some people are affected by immigration, some people aren't. How do you write different stories as far as this might be here's what you should know about this law, or is it just kind of all encompassing? Do you write 5 stories or one story, I guess?
We write several stories. Basically, we write some stories that are just, this is the law, this is what the law has in place, and then we also create other stories that are a little bit more exhaustive depending if you are an undocumented person. What are some of the resources that you can have? What are some of the organizations working to help the undocumented community? Some of these people are obtaining some help from these organizations, which has been a good service for them. Obviously, they are saying they're not criminals. They just want to be able to stay here in the country and eventually also regularize their status. So that's also why some of the organizations are helping with that. And then we also just cover some of the implications of the law. So that's what we will be continue following. What happens now that has already been implemented? What are some of the outcomes of it? And if in fact it's going to impact more than just people that are detained by the major crimes.
Are you seeing anything? I mean, I guess it's only been in law since December 1st, is that right?
Yes.
So is it kind of too soon to say yet what the impact has been?
Yeah, so far we have not seen any impact directly that anybody has reached to us, but we will have to wait a little bit more on that. What we want to do is at least in a month verify what is the data that is provided by the sheriff's offices so we can just give that into the lens with what we are hearing from the local communities. But so far, most of what has been said is just that fear of not wanting to even reach out to organizations that are helping the immigrant community because they're scared that just talking with somebody about their status could be impactful for them.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break and we'll come back and talk more about that and then share our picks for our headliner of the week. We'll be right back.
Get in the game with the college-branded Venmo debit card. Wreck your team with every tap and earn up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash, a new rewards program from Venmo. No monthly fee, no minimum balance, just school pride and spending power. Get in the game and sign up for the Venmo debit card at venmo.com/collegecard. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. Select schools available. Venmo Stash terms and exclusions apply at venmo.me/stash terms. Max $100 cash back per month.
Are you stuck staring at your W-2? Are tax refund worries holding you back? You probably have FOMO, the fear of messing up. The fix? Using TurboTax on Intuit Credit Karma. They find every credit and deduction to help you get every refund dollar you deserve, or your money back. It's time to overcome your fear of messing up and get your taxes done right. Start filing today in the Credit Karma app.
You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm Capitol Bureau Chief Dawn Vaughan, here with Claudia Rivera Cotto from Enlace Latino NC. Before the break, we were talking about the drama at the legislature this past week. They adjourned sine die on Friday. There was no handkerchief ceremony, to the disappointment of me and also Representative Maria Cervania in the House. She had asked Speaker Moore on the floor if they were going to have the ceremony, and he said no. And I talked with her after, and we shared the disappointment that they really should have done that. That would have been fun. But anyway, the next session is here in less than a month. So let's go back to what, Claudia, you were talking a little bit about with the incoming Trump administration and what this is really going to mean. What are people's concerns of people that you've interviewed about just this year ahead?
Yes, so particularly with the plans of Donald Trump of mass deportation, that's something that is very concerning because, as he has said, one of his plans is to also use local officials to enact that job. Understanding that ICE has also not have the amount of money that they would want to. So that's something that people are concerned about that could impact also the trust of local immigrants with the authorities, as they cannot reach out even if they are victims of a crime or if they know about a crime. There are some visas particularly that are given, like visas U, that are given to immigrants that have seen a crime, and that is to incentivize them to be part of the community and to help the local authorities. So they are worried that this will no longer be something that the immigrant community will feel that they can do. Another thing that Donald Trump has mentioned is the end of birthright citizenship, and I think that's something important to clarify. We have talked also to some local lawyers that have told us that he cannot do that by himself, although he did say that he could. There has to be a process, particularly most likely a constitutional amendment, because of the 14th Amendment requires anybody that is born in the United States, regardless of their parents' immigration status, to be a U.S. citizen. So this would have to be something that at least 38 states would agree on to change in the Constitution. And just letting people know to also be not be stressed about that part at the end of birthright citizenship, as it's something that is also very concerning for the community.
How are you thinking, what's your, just about how you're going to cover things, who you're going to talk to just this coming year? Do you think a lot of it is going to be, President-elect Trump's promises of what he wants to do immediately? Are you thinking about talking to people in the community more then, or it seems like the workload obviously is going to be pretty heavy with the interest in people wanting to know what's going on?
Yes, so we have to reach out to people from the community, from organization leaders, to know what they're doing, so we can also publish articles about this and inform the public. But another thing that we're focusing on is about we know there's a lot of misinformation out there, so we want to be able to reach, as I was mentioning, lawyers or people that know more about how this actually works, so people are not misinformed with what they're seeing online.
Okay. I want to talk about it would be a headliner of the week, but it was also just the part of the news this week. We were talking about the override, but also this was House Speaker Tim Moore's last session, and he's been in power for, I want to say, a decade as Speaker. Neither of us has covered him that entire time, but it's a big shift as a reporter because that's just what we've known, the entire time we've been working in that building. Senate Leader Berger is sticking around. Representative Dustin Hall, who was really the main proponent behind HB 10, will be the next speaker. The caucus already elected him. They have one formality they need to do when the session starts. But Moore gave a long speech, thanked all of his staff. 2 of his staff are coming to D.C. with him, he said. Some are going to work for Representative Hall. Others haven't said yet, or we don't know if they'll stay in state government or who they'll work for. And then a change to note in the Senate is that Senator Sidney Batch will be the head of the Senate Democratic Caucus, and she longtime Senate leader, Minority Leader Dan Blue, bowed out when he realized that she had the vote. So we'll be looking at pretty big changes for us, of course, for the whole state. But since we're reporters, talking about what our jobs are going to be like this coming year. And then, of course, as we mentioned before, Stein will be governor. So really, I feel like it's just Senate Leader Berger that's sticking around as far as the leadership. So we'll see how the changes are in just a couple of weeks. January 8th is the first day of session that they'll have the swearings in. They'll probably do that formality with, it'll be new Speaker Hall. And then House Clerk James White told me the other day that January 29th is the other date to remember, because that's when it really starts with all the action. So, all right, well, let's move on to our picks for Headliner of the Week, which are not political, which is great. The fun part of the show. Of course, politics is fun, just in a different way. Mine is all of the crazy sports drama with, I haven't followed NFL football, but I do college football. Belichick at UNC. So Governor Cooper quipped that, now UNC football will be on SportsCenter every other day. So if UNC wanted a lot of attention, they got it, and it's the amount of money. I mean, goodness gracious, that is a lot of money. And we'll see if I always talk about ROI. So we'll see if the return on investment of $10 million a year, I think, that he's going to get, if that actually pays off. So that's my headliner, sports. So, all right, Claudia, what's your headliner of the week?
So mine's is Christmassy. We've been seeing, obviously, what has happened in the western part of North Carolina, and as they're recovering from Hurricane Helene, they are doing some holiday activities that I think people should join to boost that local economy and celebrate under the spirit of the season. And one of them is the Gingerbread Community Trail. Some people might be familiar with the 32nd National Gingerbread House Competition, but it was canceled this year because of the impact of Hurricane Helene. So what they decided to do was to transform this tradition this year and support the local community by doing that trail, which will be over 45 artistic gingerbread creation will be displayed in local businesses and venues around Asheville. And this will be in some hotels, which will open their doors until January 5th. You will be able to see this at local shops, cafes, and other local spaces in Western North Carolina.
Have you ever built a gingerbread house?
I have never, actually.
I've helped my son build one, and maybe I did as a kid or something. Actually, I do remember in elementary school we did one, but it wasn't gingerbread. It was like cardboard, and you didn't get to eat it. And I thought,
it's not fun.
I know, that was kind of a ripoff. So I do have a giant inflatable gingerbread man in my front yard, though. So Gingy, to quote the Shrek character. What kind of decorations do you have?
I just have lights up there and some stockings as well. But I usually do definitely the Christmas tree and just some basic Christmas decorations. I'm
a little bit of everything, I guess, but I do love the holidays. All right, folks. So we will have another Under the Dome episode next week. It'll be kind of our look back, year in review, and then we'll take a week off after that and come back in the new year. I want to thank Claudia for being our guest. I hope you come back sometime to talk about future legislation or whatever else you're covering.
Thank you. I appreciate the time, and thank you for inviting me.
All right. For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome and NC Insider, and sign up for our weekly political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.